Great. Welcome. This is Shade Tree Commission for December 7th, 8th. 8th, thank you. And, yes, so first order of business tonight for our meeting is to set the agenda, to set the quorum, which we have set. The second thing is to vote on the minutes from last time can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Can I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have no old business, new business, or any of the regulatory business, so we are going to go right into our presentation that we have tonight. So, thank you.
So Ryan, if you can hear us, it looks like we might have some problems with the presentation.
Okay, I'll go ahead with my intro. I am Eliana Ballett. I am a student with the Voinovich School at Ohio University, and I am a master's student. I live on Home Street over in the East neighborhood, right next to the library, and technical difficulties.
This one's right.
This one was right.
Okay.
Oh, stand by, those of you at home. The technology wizard has arrived.
Looks like the computer froze.
We didn't want it to be easy, did we?
No, of course not. Yeah.
I think we're going to need a new computer for this podium.
Oh, no. Not tonight, hopefully. Not tonight.
Add
Maybe
that
this
to the budget
keyboard's
for
battery's dead.
2023.
That might be an issue.
We can-
Okay, it's just a battery issue?
No, it's not.
Are you going any
Everything's
place
not.
today?
No.
Let's get together for coffee. Okay. I'm done with my class now. So, yes. Yeah.
I might have to reboot this computer. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I tell you what, why don't we skip while we're just waiting, and we can go to the other agenda item that we have, which is the update on the neighborhood planting. So one of the initiatives that we have for Shade Tree this year was to increase the number of trees planted in the city, and that included in some of the neighborhoods where we have reduced tree canopy, especially in the near and the far east neighborhoods. And the way that we set it up is that we were soliciting interested neighbors, and they would then set up a time to meet with us. We would go over their land and, their desires for the city right-of-way property in front of their house. We would talk about any utility or drainage issues. We would talk about the type of trees that they might want. And then we ordered those trees from Menards, from our tree bank.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Who's we?
So you were one of the people who did it?
No, I mean,
Or,
I didn't do any of that. I talked to them about, did they want a tree?
Yes.
That's all I did.
yes, well, that's the point where I'm at right now, talking about,
No, I mean, you
talking to the
drainage,
neighbors.
what kind of tree they want, all that.
That is, I did those visits, all of them. So all 10 of them I did at this point. We also had, I think Andrew did, David Riggs did one of them as well, along with Ann Bonner, because there was a site on the west side that needed special attention. They took down a tree. So I met with those individuals along with David, and that went pretty well. And we made the orders, and then so then I followed up with the residences, and out of the 10 people, 2 of the people decided that they did not want trees at that point. One of them was going to move, and the other one was concerned about drainage and their drainage tiles with the sewer and perhaps the tree roots getting into that. Even though we had a solution, so we had that. And then we had one neighbor who did not respond at all, 0. And I later found out it was because they had planned to remove a tree stump. They had taken down a large tree, and then they found out the cost of removing the tree stump. And it was just too expensive. So out of the 10, we lost 3 right off the bat. The other neighbors were really great. I went out and marked the property with flags. We contracted with Greenleaf, so Andrew Chicky and I with Kevin Skurlock from the city. And that's where we are right now. We're waiting for Greenleaf to plant the trees.
Yay.
And the process sounds really straightforward, but actually it wasn't. There were lots of emails. I actually had to chase up two of the people by going to their homes and finding them. I really want to work with the neighbors. I think that this is a great program. The idea, though, is that we're going to scale it up. So 10 is small, right? We were talking about 50 trees. If we do this, I think we need to bring more people on board to do this. I think we need to streamline the process too. I think that you definitely want input from the neighbors because they're going to be the ones who tell you what kind of trees that they want, and the long-term commitment is theirs essentially to water as well as to maintain the tree.
Well, here's
But it's got to get easier.
here's another observation. As the person that did the first step, which is to present the idea to the person, to the resident, I could have done more. I could have done more in that visit than, and could have maybe taken care of most of what had to do in the follow-up.
I would say maybe, because my experience, Nancy, is that the initial conversation people were on board, and then during the interim time, for a couple different reasons, they decided that they didn't
I
want
don't
to
mean
follow
that it's
through.
not going to it's going to increase the number who stick with it. I'm just saying that in terms of us, the time to do it.
You mean like
could-
educationally? Like with, this is what is required that we want from you, and here is the list of species that we think we would want. This
Yeah.
one would probably be really good. And a lot of that could probably be also in a brochure that you leave, because a lot of people won't listen, but they'll read later, and then it will go together.
Yeah.
Made a terrible mistake.
No, I definitely agree that it could be streamlined. There are things that have to happen, like in addition to, listening to the neighbors, you also have to look at what trees are in the neighborhood, so you're ensuring diversity. At least for me, there were some really interesting problem areas, like the one with the drainage, the sewer issues, where I had to do a lot of research on the types of trees that don't actually have roots that would interfere. So for example, that was the golden rain tree. It's not a native, but it's a really good tree for what they wanted. So yeah, I think that we could have like maybe a menu of trees that we could recommend, but in a lot of these neighborhoods, you have a lot of weird issues. Stumps, utilities,
The stumps.
compacted ground, just really unusual things. And then people who don't want certain attributes in trees, like things that are gonna fall off, like, pine cones and other things. But Nancy, I would welcome the help, I just,
I mean, you're
yeah.
talking about smoothing it out, and I was
Yeah.
thinking, I could have done much more during that first visit
Sorry about
if I
that.
had.
And I think it's all a learning process. We just didn't know what it was going to be like. I convinced myself it was going to be like, no problem, this is going to go smoothly. And some of it did and some of it didn't. So are we ready? Oh, okay, sorry. So I guess what I'm saying is stay tuned. The other thing is that we did get money from the Voinovich School to plant in the riparian project. And so now we're trying to maybe get some money to plant in the neighborhoods because we did not get the grant this round. So what we're hoping is maybe to do a GoFundMe campaign, but I'm still waiting on the city to figure out if they're allowed to do it or not. So back over to you.
Do I need to reintroduce myself?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, I am Eliana Ballett. I live over on Home Street, right next to Athens Public Library. I am a graduate student with the Voinovich School as part of Ohio University. I am doing a master's in environmental science. And I created this project in collaboration with my two classmates for my community sustainability course, David Lamp and Manoush Kasha. I am so sorry. I'm having a hard time pronouncing her name. It will be at the end of the presentation, though. So the problem that we were presented with, that our community partner, Shade Tree, wanted us to help solve, was that the city of Athens has experienced a significant decline in trees over the last few decades due to aging trees and disease. To address this loss, the city wants to start a program to plant trees in the city right-of-way in front of homes in collaboration with homeowners. And then we just gave in the survey a definition of what the city right-of-way was for those unfamiliar with that. So these were the pilot areas. Primarily we targeted Elmwood Place and Morris Avenue. However, we did have a few other streets that we ended up passing by where homeowners were willing to speak to us, namely Home Street. So the reasons for these streets are that they were close together. This allowed us to get an overview of a street with a good tree canopy and a street with a moderate canopy. These were both in the East neighborhood, one of the two planned targeted neighborhoods for the Shade Tree Commission for these tree plantings. So, associated with trees, as I'm sure you all know, there are benefits and concerns. Benefits that are of interest in Athens are trees can shape both individual and collective identity. A lot of times people that have a good tree canopy on their street or a tree of particular interest in front of their house will be very invested in that tree. It sort of becomes part of their home. They can represent personal values. People who are really passionate about the environment might be really, really happy if they get a native tree out in front of their home or even down the street. They provide physical and psychological benefits. They encourage more vigorous activity by encouraging walking in the neighborhoods, and overall better health, better air quality, and better social interaction by, if you're getting out there and you're walking down the street more often and your neighbors are doing the same, you'll have a better connection with the rest of your neighborhood. Of course, trees are also very visually pleasing. They provide shade, make the outside more enjoyable to walk in. They lower ambient air temperatures in the summer. And of course, we all love those fall colors that we get here in Southeast Ohio. We also love those spring flowers. Again, they enhance the neighborhood with that shade, giving the look of a nice green space. However, there are also, again, concerns attached to this. The primary concerns that are of importance in Athens are maintenance concerns, potential damage to power lines, sidewalks, homes. Another big one that was identified when we were going door to door was falling leaves and just general debris, especially seeds. And in certain cases, they can cause limited visibility. I'm sure we've all tried to pull up to a stop sign and you just can't see around the corner because the person who lives on that corner doesn't trim their bushes. So we came to the conclusion that a survey was the best way to help the Shade Tree Commission target where to plant these trees and which kinds of trees to plant. And also just identify which neighborhoods and which individuals are most interested in having trees planted. Went through a few iterations before we reached its current form, and here are the questions. So it's just a really quick survey meant to get people to take it with 5 minutes of their time, make it really streamlined, gauge that interest, not only in the trees, but in what kind of trees, and also identify concerns. So the first question is whether or not people felt that the trees in their neighborhood city right-of-way was adequate. The second one was if they support the city planting trees in their neighborhood. Question 3 was a ranked question, just asking people what would they value most about planting trees. And that's just options like they're beautiful, they provide health benefits, provide habitat, capture stormwater, provide shade. improve air quality, and we also had a write-in option in case there was anything that anybody wanted to add on that we forgot about. Question 4 was just to check all that apply, how they wanted the city to prioritize the selection of trees, like Dr. Malley Brune mentioned. We may want to provide people with a sort of menu of trees. So this was to help gauge what should, I guess, go on that menu. Question 5 was the last targeted content question. And it was just asking people if there were any concerns that they had about the trees. That covers just the general one. Also added on wildlife damage, because if you have, say, a tree that drops a lot of fruit, you might get deer, which we all know that we have an overpopulation of deer in Ohio, so and especially when the bucks show up in the fall, they can cause quite a bit of issues. And then questions 6 and 7 were just optional identifying information to help us understand where these people are and if they are personally interested in having a tree on their property. We had quite a few people provide their emails. One man was very, very excited to be emailed by the Shade Tree Commission. He already had a tree on both of his neighbors' right-of-ways, and he was very, very excited to have his own tree. So the initial data, we got 12 pilot responses, and the number of those who agreed and disagreed to any degree on question 1 were about equal. There was one person that very strongly disagreed. They wanted more trees. Interestingly enough, they did live on Elmwood, which has been identified as having a good tree canopy. So this woman very much was of the opinion that you can never have too many trees. And all but one recipient of the survey expressed desire to have trees planted in their neighborhood. This woman just chose to mark no on that second question. Was just mostly concerned about debris and sidewalk damage. And the most valued aspects of trees in the neighborhood were beauty, habitat services such as providing habitat for birds or food for caterpillars, things like that. Shade and improved air quality. Residents expressed a desire that the city prioritize trees that provided shade, supported our native wildlife, aid pollinators, and are native to eastern North America. And the biggest expressed concern by a wide margin for tree plantings was maintenance concerns, and this was loosely followed by property and sidewalk damage potential. So, in addition to the survey responses, we spoke to one gentleman who refused the survey on the grounds that he very, very much disliked street trees. However, he was willing to speak with us about why this was. His biggest concern was debris, especially acorns and leaves from the oak tree in front of his home. Others who were positive towards trees did express verbally to us a dislike of trees that produced nuisance seed pods, such as sweet gum. So at this time, based on those pilot results, our recommendations are to address the concerns over property damage, clarify any maintenance responsibilities to avoid any misunderstandings and reluctance, because that's where a lot of the reluctance for trees comes from, is people being really fuzzy on what they are supposed to do to their tree, furthermore what they're allowed to do to their tree, because they really don't want to get in trouble, but also if there's a very big problem limb that's about to fall on their house, they sometimes don't know who to call. And finally, to emphasize the positives of trees with a focus on the benefits most favored by survey participants. So, for averting concerns, we very strongly recommend to clarify the maintenance responsibilities, clarify to residents that trees will be selected for infrastructure in mind to abate concerns about sidewalk damage or damaged power lines. Where right-of-way space is limited, avoid trees with a larger trunk diameter and or surface roots. So avoid things like large oaks or bald cypress, which if you've ever seen a bald cypress in its natural habitat, it sends up all those big knobs of wood. which can really mess up the sidewalk. And select trees that have a lower potential for nuisance debris. If you have not encountered a sweet gum or just don't know what it looks like, that little picture in the center bottom is a picture of one of their seed pods. And they drop those by the hundreds. Okay, our second phase of recommendations is helping the people love the trees that are in their neighborhood and in front of their house. So the biggest hurdle has already been overcome by the Shade Tree Commission, and that is reaching out and allowing for resident input. If you allow people to choose their tree and have input on what trees go in their neighborhood, they're going to be much more invested in that tree's health. Once the survey results come in, the second bullet point may change a little bit, but as of right now, just general is market towards the positives favored by the survey. As of right now, that's beauty, those flowers and those fall colors, large shade trees where possible, and native trees where possible. Again, as has been mentioned, there is a bit of a concern with compacted soil in places where our natives may not do so well, and in certain spaces where you only have a few feet of land, you definitely want to avoid those large shade trees. But where there is a nice big strip, you do definitely want to factor in possible large shade trees. Other than that, focus on the habitat services. One of the biggest verbally expressed positives to us was bird watching. Lots of people really like birds, and they know that there's that connection. The more trees you have, the more birds you have. And finally, just focus on those health benefits. Focus on the ambient temperature and the air quality. So next steps, wider distribution of the survey with a focus on east and far east neighborhoods where the canopy has already been degraded. Promote this in local businesses, neighborhood Facebook groups, etc. And implementation of providing marketing strategies with adjustment for what the final results are. And here's the contact information of myself and my classmates. Thank you.
Eliana,
Nice.
do you have what you need, or are you willing to put it together yourself, the information that you could use to market?
Yes, I can type up a document and send that to Dr. Mally Brune.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
She'll send it to me.
Yeah. Once final, next week I can definitely get that sent over to her.
So you're going to work on it yourself?
Yes. We also have a link to the survey, which we need to figure out how to turn that over to you guys for wider distribution.
You should be able to give me admin privileges. But that would be great. That way we can reach out to the people who favorably, want a tree. So I would hate to lose that enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think I've always, it's been my thought that the main thing is people don't realize the real positives that trees have in their neighborhood, and only think of the difficulties of the leaves falling and breaking and stuff. So I think that would be a great service if we can get that started.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you go back to question number 1?
Yes.
So you said that for question number 1, which says, I feel the number of my trees in the city right away is adequate. You said that it was about 50-50.
Yes.
Was that surprising or not, based on the neighborhoods that you went to?
What was interesting is that most of the agrees were on Elmwood, and a lot of the most of the disagrees were on Elmwood, and a lot of the agrees were on Morris, which was kind of counterintuitive to what we expected.
So there's a reason why there aren't trees on Morris, is what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Well, I think that is really interesting. We have to sell the benefits of the trees, but I also think that the neighbors have a point. I mean, imagine living in a place where, regretfully, the city hasn't had the funds to remove trees, to remove stumps, to maintain trees properly, and to fix sidewalks. And all you're seeing are basically the detriments to these trees. So I think that along with having, a program that replaces trees, it's really important that we also work with the city to ensure that they have the budget to maintain those trees and to maintain the infrastructure. Otherwise, you're going to be planting trees that are eventually going to be seen as a nuisance,
The part that I don't
and you're going to
know-
have an issue.
I don't know whether all of the trees that are planted now are in the right of way. I mean, I think a lot of them are outside of the right of way, and nobody can do that except the owner to take care of the maintenance. So-
Correct, yeah. So we can only deal with,
Right.
you're right, with the right-of-way, but there are a lot of trees on Elmwood and Morris
They
that
have
are
small front
in,
yards.
yeah,
Well, it's
but
also,
they're in the right-of-way, and
some of
they
them
are
really
not
bad.
being maintained. Yeah, and I talked to Andrew, and he is trying desperately to set aside budgets, not only for pruning, but also for stump removal, which will be the first time. They're trying to make it a policy now that when they remove a tree, they remove the stump, if there's good potential that a tree
Tree could be planted.
can be
Well,
planted.
I know the empty lots on Charles, a lot of those have stumps, because they've had trees before, and now,
And they were huge.
yeah.
Those trees were huge. Well, I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude
Yeah,
to
thanks so
the
much.
three of you, but especially you to, come forward as the spokesperson for
Thank
the
you.
group.
Can I ask a question? You sound like
yeah.
you're wrapping up.
No, but I just didn't want to not say that. Go ahead.
I'll say it too at the end, but I had a question. Can you advance it when there's one question I'm not sure which one it was. Yeah, stop there a minute.
This one?
I guess, so this one and then the next one, it's like, what are the good things and what are the bad things? Are you able to say the relative rankings of them? Did you say, okay, you identified these pros, you identified these cons, do you put them on a scale, which one
Yes.
do you weigh more?
So for question 4, the items that were selected most, I think it was either top 3 or top 4, were roughly equal in ranking. However, with the cons, maintenance was checked much more often, was twice as often as the next 2.
I meant more my question is
Oh,
somebody, they said, yes, I really like shade.
Yeah.
And then they said, but I'm concerned about maintenance. Are you able to assess are they going to lean towards, yeah, I'm going to lean one way or the other? So they're not ranking it, they're just saying, I have this concern, I have this like.
Yeah.
But then which one's going to win out when they decide whether they're going to put a tree in the ground or not?
Well, but they do ask a question at the
Yeah.
end, are you willing to have the city put in
So
a
it's if
tree?
if they give you their email, we know which way they leaned.
But I can see what you're saying.
I think it's a little hard when you only have 12 response, you know.
Well, I was thinking more of like maybe a Likert scale kind of
Yeah,
for those
I
questions.
agree. I think that being able to identify the number 1, 2, and 3 of the issues, I think that would help,
I was surprised that they want native trees. That's great.
Yeah.
because we talked about it so much. You know, we've talked about it a lot, so,
To the neighbors on Elmwood.
to everybody.
So now the question becomes, so we have a survey. It can easily be taken online. The reason why I asked the students to take it out into the community first was we just wanted to make sure that no one tripped up over what we were actually asking. It's amazing how many times it's straight in your head and then you go and you ask the question, they're like, what the heck are you talking about?
What you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so, it was a good dress rehearsal. I don't know if we had any fundamental flaws. That doesn't mean that we can't enhance the survey, and perhaps we should. At this point, do we want to proceed with having more respondents And so my question, I think, to you now is, you did this, you were with the individuals. Do you see specific value in a person being there and asking the questions because you're getting additional feedback? Or do you think that there is sufficient value in maybe just getting numbers at this point?
So I definitely see value in both. Just getting the straight numbers obviously increases the volume of responses you'll have, because if somebody's not home, then going door to door ends up not reaching out to them. However, as we mentioned here, those in-person conversations ended up yielding some new light on things that weren't brought up in the survey. For example, the one gentleman who refused the survey did give us valuable insight, along with the one gentleman that was very positive towards trees that said, "I will take it if you promise not to plant sweet gum." So that really shed light, even though debris in general, leaf litter may not be as big of a concern. However, it does shed light on what types of trees to put on that menu, so to speak.
Well, do you think that your being there added to the quality of the answers?
I do think so, because people were also able to ask clarifying questions. For example, a few people asked, "Well, what do you mean by wildlife damage?" And we were able to clarify that.
What is your, what does the sample look like that you have? What are their ages?
So ages were
Ages?
ages were very varied.
Right. And whether they were renters or not.
So most of the people did express that they did own their home. We did also have a few renters take it. They ended up not providing their email, but still very much wanted to make their voice heard.
Was there any owners, rental owners that you approached with this?
No, we did not have a chance to do that.
My concern is when you get one or two people who are very vocal, that really skews the whole thing. I kind of know who the gentleman is, and he's always like this. So I think that's, well, no, the thing is that, you know, it's kind of been seen that older people are more concerned about gum trees and stuff and those sort of issues than younger renters sort of thing. But we need to be able to look at that cross-section. Morris and Maplewood are rich roads, you know. You're getting the top half of the people in the city. And that's a huge concern of all of us when we've been talking about doing equity and those sort of things. And this is a perfect time to be able to maybe address some of that, and maybe really look at being able to identify some areas that you want to go into in a different way, or sort of thing to broaden that data. Because I think that it's important when we go forward, we don't want to just have like retirees and their opinions, because that kind of happens because they're at home when people go out and survey. I mean, it's the same in politics and everything.
Yeah.
So-
Reflecting on that, I would recommend perhaps adding in questions on if somebody is a renter, and perhaps age group, just ranges like 20.
So some demographic
Yeah,
Yeah,
information.
the
Add in some
demographics need to be on it, yes.
I definitely think demographic questions reflecting on that would be
And
very
I
useful.
think there's something to be said for people who, I mean, it's a matter of people feeling like the city really wants to know whether I like trees or not. And that gets them, I mean,
And that's
a good-
important.
It's a good thing, I think.
I mean, there's a lot of ways, if one wants to go forward and expand this, we can let people know that the survey's out there and such. I think that the pedestrian survey that they just put out was an awesome example that you can get 700 respondents coming back on an email sort of thing. So I think that maybe going forward, just kind of looking at those different ways of approaching people, or identification of these are the areas that maybe we didn't hit and that might need to be hit later.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right too about people
But-
being home during the day.
I would agree with that, but, in terms of 700 respondents out of a city that's 20,000, that's not representative. And that's something that we have to understand, is that this survey isn't going to be representative. 40% respondents is minimum for representation. And so then the question becomes, is this a survey where we know it's always going to be pilot data, guiding data, biased, but we try and handle that with, including like the demographic information for sure? Or do we continue to go to door and actually do more of a qualitative study where it's never going to be generalizable, but you can do more in-depth? And from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you got benefit from both. You got benefit from understanding and being able to, do the rankings on the responses, but at the same time, some of the in-depth answers were really informative. So I think we're going to have to think about how we decide to move forward, but it's been really helpful. You didn't have a lot of time, and I know you guys pushed at the end of the semester to get out there, and you were only able to do 2 streets. But I think that the reason why now we're grilling you a little bit is because you've demonstrated this is interesting. There's the potential to get really interesting data that I think could help us.
Because we want to know.
We really do. And so, anybody else have any questions before we just
I have a
say thank
comment.
you? Yeah.
I would take issue with your 40% for representativeness. I mean, if it's a random sample, if you introduce random element, then you don't
Yeah.
need 40%. But
40% is the gold standard for any survey. So,
Okay, I'll let that one go. But
Okay.
what do we do with this information? So like when we get this survey, how do we use it? And I think that affects us whether we want
Right.
in-depth 12 surveys or we want
Right.
70.
I think what it needs to do when we start putting together, piecing our plan, our overall city shade tree plan, that this information will go in because this presents a snapshot of the current conditions that are right now with the people that you talk to. I think that to certain degrees that what we hear from Scuttlebutt and stuff, that you are on the track of the right track, sort of thing. I think that having information always helps when you have to go and say, we need money. We want money because look at all this wonderful stuff we've been doing, or grants and stuff. So I think that going forward and being able to, if nothing else comes of it, statistically, you have stories of people.
well, except stories are not statistics, but.
Right, no, but
but-
if you don't have any, but you
But if-
still come out with stories of what people are talking about, which helps.
I
to-
agree.
Yeah.
And what Nancy said is it shows that the city and Shade Tree is interested in what.
I think
It builds a
right now-
dialogue, I think, but what I want to get out of it, Jim, is when we have a communication strategy for this program, we know some of the things that we have to address. Yes, we understand maintenance has been an issue. This is what the city is prepared to do. This is what we're expecting you to do. When we figure out the inventory of trees, we know that people are already leaning towards natives, which is great, so we can also lean that way. I actually worry about almost the opposite problem. When I had to go to the homeowner and they really wanted maples on their property or a native, and I had to say, due to the compaction, due to the utilities, due to everything you have, I can't think of, and I spoke to Ann Bonner about this, we could not come up with a native that was going to work on her property. And that was the golden rain tree. And so, if anything, we also have to teach people, how do we select trees? And I think that these kind of answers sort of will guide us, it will give us an idea of what is their tree literacy. I really didn't know what to expect on that. And it seems like it's actually pretty high. I was pretty proud.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody wants a tree, but they know why they don't want a tree. And so
And they know
that's
stuff
what
about
I'm looking for
native trees.
out of this. Does that help?
Yeah.
So,
But I have the feeling right now it would be good for us to get numbers and also to get information
well, certainly
out.
more than 12.
And get information out to a lot of people about the benefits of trees, so that we can.
Yeah, the caution that I would have, I agree with you, is that because we have the question on there about, do you want a tree? We need to make sure that we are prepared to follow up with everybody who says yes, because I don't know about you guys, but when somebody comes and promises me something and they don't follow through, it leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. So
And
I
that would be
think,
the next step then. The
Yeah.
next step would be an actual contact.
or maybe even concurrent, you know, one group is, you know, sort of monitoring the survey and another group is doing the follow-up, so that way, you know, and we're gonna have to create a database and yada, yada. But we like trees, so we'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other questions?
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I said, more of a comment, really, and I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you putting in all the time and effort on this. Any kind of volunteer work is always incredibly appreciated. I know it's for school, but this is your time that you could be spending doing something else, and you're choosing to try and work on a project that has a real tangible positive effect for the city of Athens. And as a member of city council, I really appreciate that, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was an amazing opportunity to get to reach out to the community.
I have one more question.
Oh,
Can we put this PowerPoint on our webpage? Are you
Yes.
okay with that?
Go for it.
All right,
Great.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Have a happy holiday.
Okay, any other presentations or anything?
No.
Okay. Before we take a vote to adjourn, I would like to actually say thank you, because one of our members is leaving us because she has visions of going on traveling and retirement sort of things. That's right.
Tickets are bought and paid for.
That's right. So I just want to say how much I appreciate you so much for all the work that you've done, especially on that grant. That was a monster, and I just really, really appreciate all the work that you've done.
Well, I have
So,
appreciated getting to
thank
know
you.
all these people all around, and I have learned so much and enjoyed so much, and not least of which I have learned now how to properly plant a tree and take care of it. Taught by Ann Bonner
Yep.
and everyone here, so
So.
that's good.
So thank you, Catherine.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you were here, Catherine.
Yeah.
We're going to
Me
France
too.
for the spring.
Yeah. So the next order of business is to set our next meeting, which will be in January. I have to look at my calendar. I may not be here, but that's okay. Are any of us going to be here? Is it before the break? We can.
I will be here.
Okay.
It's the 12th.
The 12th. Okay, I'll be here. So January 12th is the next meeting.
Okay.
And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Thank you. Second?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And bye.
Merry
Yep.
Christmas.